Let's get hyped. Welcome in to the Husker247 HypeCast. This is the Akron edition. Nebraska 1-0, coming off of a win against Cincinnati. Now taking on another town in Ohio. The Huskers big on facing Rust Belt towns and Rust Belt cities this year. I guess Cincinnati's not really Rust Belt, but do with that what you will. All right, I am Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Brunch, Brian Christopherson. As always, we are Husker247. And this week, our special guest, joining us before his own battle in Ohio, Kevin Kugler. Ooh. You might know him from Fox broadcast, BTN broadcast. You might remember him as being a local radio guy. You might know him just because you see him around Omaha every now and then. Kevin Kugler, welcome to the show.
I'm excited. Next week, Houston Christian, which few people know is actually in the heart of Ohio. So it's kind of a nice surprise to get the chance to come in and do 3 straight weeks of Ohio talk.
Yeah, that's great. That is, Houston Christian, which I think is right off Lake Erie there.
Yep.
Is that about right?
Yeah. It's Houston, Ohio. It's a city not many people know about, but it's a real place. And I would not recommend Googling it, but just trust us on this. Get hyped. Next week, more Ohio.
Absolutely. All right, let's just jump right into this. And as we do, we're starting on the offensive side of the ball, and we're going to start with our special guest, Kevin Kugler. What were your thoughts watching Nebraska on Thursday night against Cincinnati, knowing they're taking on another Power 4 team, so it's not like it's just a gimme or a layup in week 1, but also just sort of taking in how Nebraska looked offensively? What'd you think of all of it?
Because I've done this a long time and been around here a long time, I got started thinking about watching the game. I kept hearing Bill Callahan when he said, we don't take what defenses give us, we take what we want. And it was sort of the opposite of that. Nebraska seemed to just decide they were going to take what the defense was going to give them over the course of this game. And look, I know a lot of Husker fans because I've had many in my life who were going, what was with the short passing game? What was ever 4-yard passes, 5-yard passes, check down. I'm like, it's game 1, so I don't ever take anything in game 1 and extrapolate it to the entirety of a season. 2, or B, depending on how you like to follow these things, B, it was a game in which Nebraska had that opportunity to do so, and they did. They relied on Emmett Johnson, and they got a win. It was the most important game of Matt Rhule's tenure, in my opinion, going in. He had to win that game. Yes, it was a Power 4 team, but you had to win it because you knew you were a better team. At least you thought you were on paper than what Cincinnati has with a coach on the hot seat. And they got that done. So to me, all of the concerns, and I think many of them are valid coming out of that, I still think the bottom line with Nebraska football circa 2025 is you got to just win the game. And they did exactly what they had to do on offense to win the game.
BC, kind of working off of what Kevin's talking about there and just what Dana Holgorsen was talking about on Tuesday at the press conference, how do you see Nebraska being able to create more explosive plays, even in the designs of sort of a short passing game when they have to play that way?
Well, make some people miss. I mean, Dana pointed out the ball was in play when you count receptions and rushes 64 times where they had to be tackled, and he charted only 6 plays where they made people miss. So they've got to do better at that. There's certain ones which are understandable. Like Isaiah Hunter makes a really nice readjustment on a 24-yard catch, for example. You got to give him credit for that. And then there's that part of you is like, man, if he just could have kept his feet, he skirts down the sideline and it's probably like a 60-yard touchdown. So those plays are, they seem like they're within grip. Matt Rhule thinks they're within grip. But it's definitely something they've got to get better at. Cincinnati's defensive scheme certainly accounted for a lot of that. We have to emphasize that again and again. But only one play beyond 20 yards, and I know Dana wants to see more of that. And he pointed out on Tuesday's practice he didn't see enough of it. So that he's challenging them throughout the week. Like we've got to find a way at that second and third level, which was a problem for this team last year, by the way, to get past that one last ankle tackle or whatever it is that keeps tripping guys up and stopping you from those big explosives that can be the difference, when you get to Big Ten play.
Michael Bruns, as we sort of look at Nebraska's offense as a whole, one thing that hasn't been discussed a lot, at least amongst our group that I can think of, is just the offensive line play. What'd you think about what was happening up front on Thursday for Nebraska? And then they did something we hadn't seen a lot of under Matt Rule and even previous regimes recently. And that was they were heavy in terms of rotating some offensive linemen in there throughout the night. So you were getting different looks, different offensive linemen playing together. What'd you make of all of it, and where do you think that kind of leaves things as we're sort of moving into Akron and Houston Christian as they fine-tune the rest of the non-conference?
Yeah, no, I think they held up fine. I mean, it was a good starting point for the most part. Cincinnati actually didn't pressure a ton in that game. When you kind of dig into the numbers, I think it was less than a quarter of the time where they bring in more than 4 guys. So, I think the key though going forward, like you mentioned, I mean, you basically had a third split at that left tackle spot. They want to get that figured out quickly, but I mean, I think you're probably going to see that again this week, probably against Houston Christian as well. And, I think just kind of what we saw, if Pritchett can get the penalty stuff figured out, I think that's probably going to be the guy that's going to win that one. But I mean, you can't have a false start penalty on 1 yard line. I mean, that was just a killer. And that wasn't just a one-off either. That was something that he had battled through fall camp too, according to Matt Rule. So he's got to get that figured out. They've got to get that left tackle spot figured out. But I thought, especially the interior line, they were actually able to get some work done running between the tackles. And I mean, I thought Justin Evans looked really good at that center spot. We've talked on this podcast a lot about, that was going to be a pretty natural move for him. So I think you can feel good about what they're doing on the interior. It's just a matter of figuring out what that left tackle spot's going to be. And, Teddy Prohaska played the entire game. That's a positive given his background. Hopefully he gets some confidence from that too. But just getting that left tackle spot figured out is something they have to do over these next couple games. And just getting a little bit more consistency from that spot, I think, is going to be huge.
Working back to Kevin Kugler here. Kevin, what did you make of the kind of the debuts of Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter? I know there wasn't a ton of activity there, but certainly in the case of Isaiah Hunter, we got to see his ability to go up and get the ball a couple times, and we know that Dane Key can be a weapon as well. What do you make of those two guys that appear to be big parts of what Nebraska want to do in the passing game?
Yeah, and I think it's an improved area too, which they had to improve in the offseason. And I think those are two guys who can improve. But again, it goes back to what we saw from an offensive standpoint. It's hard to gauge right away what this wide receiver core is going to be until they are given the opportunity to get some of those explosive plays. I mean, and I think this weekend is going to be a great opportunity to see explosive plays. I know we'll get into Akron later, but Akron got gashed all of last year on the big play. They got gashed in week 1 for big plays. So this is a defense that certainly opens itself up to having some of these wide receivers make those big plays. But I like what I saw. I think there's athleticism. I love the size. I think this is an opportunity coming forward for Nebraska to show that improvement. I think on paper they're improved. I liked what I saw from them in the little sample size that we got from that position and what they were asked to do last week against Cincinnati. And again, everybody's going to discount Akron. They're going to discount Houston Christian. You probably should. Those are not Big Ten teams. But what it is an opportunity for us to see what these wide receivers can do, because there are big plays to be had out there. And clearly, listening to Dana Holgorsen on Tuesday, there was a frustration level with him, lack of explosive, the lack of big plays. He wants to see more of that. And I think we're going to get the chance to see more of it because we all know they hear what's going on. You can tell, you can say that they don't listen to media. They're, I'm sure, listening to the HypeCast. They, I'm sure, have heard the talk about this team doesn't have explosive. They haven't had explosive. That's 6 or 7 days now to hear that. I think you'll go out and see a concerted effort on Saturday against a team that is liable to give some up to show that they do have that in their arsenal.
Speaking of concerted efforts, Brunch, you think there will be a concerted effort to get more running backs involved after such few touches for the likes of Isaiah Mosey and Mekhi Nelson behind Emmett Johnson, who had 32 total touches in the game against Cincinnati? And now you have an opportunity with weeks against Akron and Houston Christian to maybe see what you have behind them and keep Emmett Johnson off the field a little bit because you need him later in the season.
I would hope so. I mean, like if there was ever a time you were going to see a lot of those guys, it's now. I mean, with all respect, Quentin Ives is going to be in that mix now too. I mean, you got to kind of figure out what you got there, because even against Cincinnati, I mean, yeah, those guys got in the game, but it was like very prescribed situations. Like, it was obvious the play was going to them. It still didn't look great from what we kind of saw there. I don't know if that was nerves. I don't know if it was something else going on there, but you need to give each of those guys a series and just let them settle in a little bit and see what you got. I mean, I think especially Mekhi Nelson, whose skill set wise is pretty similar to Emmett Johnson. I think he can kind of be that second back, but I'm not taking too much away from what we saw from any of those guys against Cincinnati, because it was just so limited. And you gotta, as much as we kind of talk about the left tackle spot and finding answers over these next two games, you got to find out in the next 2 weeks who can help you when you get into October and November, because you're going to need them. And, that's a position group that needs to kind of stand up and be counted here, because the depth is just not there right now, at least from what we've been able to see.
BT, it sets up to be a flood the bench kind of game if Nebraska builds a lead they hope to build. Is there anybody you're looking forward to seeing either debut-wise or maybe coming off the bench later in the game if this gets to mop-up time?
Yeah, with the receivers, I think Cortez Mills and Quinn Clark are guys I'd like to see, more snaps, what they do with that. He's not a flood the bench guy, but I think there's going to be a lot of focus on Carter Nelson after this week's conversations about it's his time with the Jadarian Bonner injury, and they're going to need a variety of guys to fill in there. But Carter only had 5 snaps in the first game. He's obviously been working his way back all offseason from that hip surgery in January. And it's just now that he got up to speed. But from the sounds of it, it's go time. They're ready to use him. And so I think that's going to be really interesting. And I'm curious, if you talk about concerted efforts, if that's part of it, to get him the ball a little bit in this game and build some confidence and some plays on tape for him.
Let's step over to the defensive side of the ball, and we will go back to Kevin Kugler here. Kevin, you got your first look at Nebraska's kind of new defensive front with a lot of new players and new faces, some veteran newcomers from the portal, and some guys that have been in the program for a few years getting their opportunity. What's your just general thought and assessment on what you saw that was happening up front for Nebraska in a game that didn't look great? It certainly didn't look as good as it did on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, the back end is where if you're a glass half full guy, which of course I am, you start with the fact that they really hemmed in Cincinnati's passing game. 69 passing yards, allowed 17 points. A lot of that was because of the work in the back end, which I think everybody thought coming in was going to be the strength of this team. But then you go to the glass shattered on the floor guy, and I mean, 6.7 yards per carry. That's not good enough. You're going to lose a lot of games if you're allowing yourself to get gashed for 7 yards per carry against better teams than Cincinnati. So there were concerns up front. I think the linebacking core, you're still trying to figure out exactly who you have there, what you have there. That looks like a work in progress. The front seven, to me, is still very much in flux, very much a question. Can you lean on the back end? Yeah, you can, to get through these next 2 games. That shouldn't be a problem. If it is, that speaks to bigger issues going forward. But this is why these next 2 games are so critical, and why it was so important to get through that first game, because now you have 2 games to sort of figure out who's going to be your playmakers along the front, who's going to be your playmakers from a linebacking standpoint, who's going to be able to shore up those holes that you saw exposed against a mobile quarterback. And you're not going to see too many of those kind of quarterbacks. So you don't have to sit here and think, oh my gosh, every week. It's not the Big 12. You're not going to be seeing somebody who's scampering all over the place on the regular once you get into the regular season of Big 10 play. You have the opportunity these next 2 games plus early in the Big 10 to kind of figure out where you're going to be. You want to figure that out, obviously, by the time Michigan comes rolling in at the end of the month. But these 2 games are so important because there are questions on that front. There are questions at linebacker. I love the back end, and I think we all knew what that was going to look like coming in, or at least we thought we did. But those front 7, that's a concern right now.
BC, Vincent Shavers rated out really well on Pro Football Focus, and his play obviously forced a big fumble. This is a guy that I think we're all pretty excited about what he could be for Nebraska over time. Where do you see the next kind of steps going in his game as he's getting more playing time here in a sophomore season?
Oh, I think it's just a consistency level from play to play. He has great explosive flash plays, and he was pretty solid all the way around. I don't want to diminish and act like he wasn't, but I think that for a guy who's still a younger player who's only started a game or so, that's still the thing. It's like when you do have a down play, it's not way down. It's just still a solid play. So that's the next thing for him. But I mean, he was one of the standouts of that game. They might not win if it's not for him showing up like he does to cause that fumble. And we talk all offseason about this team's turnover margin problem, and what it's been 2 decades in the making, it feels like. So to start +2 and him be a central part of it, that was a pretty big deal.
Brunt, what did you make of sort of how Sierra Wright, Andrew Marshall, Donovan Jones, Malcolm Hartzog certainly helped sort of shut down Cincinnati's passing attack? And is this something Nebraska can reasonably rely on week in and week out with guys like John Butler and Addison Williams and Phil Snow, veteran defensive backs coaches, defensive coordinators, all kind of working with this group?
Yeah, there's a lot of back end talk here. It was a great looking back end, I thought, for the most part. I think the thing that you have to feel good about, those quarterbacks, Jones, Marshall, and Wright, and I mean, Sierra Wright was like, you wouldn't even have known he was out there in that game because Cincinnati just was not going to challenge him. And going into that
BC
game,
didn't even want to give him credit on the Pro Football Focus stuff. Didn't even want to put his stats in there. He was so unimpressed.
The guy from Pro Football Focus didn't even know he was out there. He's like, they've just been playing with 10 guys the whole time. But no, I think that bodes well for Nebraska's defense. And I think it actually plays a little bit into the conversation about Nebraska's front seven, because I think this is a secondary that can cover well enough to buy those guys enough time to get after the quarterback a little bit more. I think Cincinnati definitely abandoned the pass, especially after halftime, but I think you have to feel really good about having essentially 3 starters at corner. Hartzog's always shown that, yeah, he's going to give some up, but he's also able to make plays when it matters. I mean, his interception numbers bear that out. But I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see if they can find roles for Donovan Jones, because I think he's just that guy that's around the ball all the time, just has a good sense of things back there. And that's a good problem to have when you're trying to fit that many guys into your secondary rotation. So I left the game feeling really good about what they've got back there. And, maybe the strength back there can even help the front seven a little bit.
Brian, where do you think the pass rush can maybe come from here? And do you think John Butler opens things up a little bit, given that they don't have Brendan Sorsby lined up across from them? You're not as worried about Finley taking off and running in the same way that Sorsby did.
Yeah, you made the big point there. They kind of had an out from that first game, right? As we talk through this, like they won the game and they've been able to say, well, they had kind of a difficult defensive scheme where you had to nickel and dime them. And then on the other side of the ball, it's like, well, we're not going to see tempo and a running quarterback just like that. And there could be truth to that. But now they got to back that up and show that against teams that maybe are more their style, they can get after a quarterback, because it's just not a good look. No matter who you're playing, when you look at the stat sheet afterward and you only have 2 TFLs and no sacks, and there was 1 QB hurry, as we talked about the other day. There's some stuff, like I think those second level guys have the capability, like Shavers, who we were talking about earlier, to get home. You want to see more from Dasan McCullough in that category. Williams Nwaneri, I thought actually showed, like, for his first full-time college action, there was some good stuff in there, and he ended up with 6 tackles. Rule mentioned he lined up kind of wide, and there's some fundamental stuff where maybe you get there if you just change a thing here or there. So we'll see, but part of this goes back to you said you had sort of an oddball matchup for your team in week 1, and I think there's truth to that. But now let's see if that's actually the case. If against more what they would view standard attacks and stuff, they can get done what they want to do, and everybody feels a little bit better about it.
Brunt, any concern about the Nebraska Jacks position and just kind of a bit of an ugly game across the board for all of them?
Yeah, McCullough looked good in space. I thought McGahee, he pursued that the end around play that didn't look real great there in the second half. Ochoa didn't really flash. I mean, I think that's a group that needs these next two games to kind of sort things out a little bit. I don't know that they have a guy right now that would be like a 3-down player for them. Like if you needed McCullough to go in there and set an edge, I have questions about that. I have questions about the ability of the other two guys to kind of play in space. So they got to get that figured out. I mean, it looked okay at times, but not enough consistency to where you'd be like, okay, these guys are absolutely ready to go in there and play Michigan if they had to this week. I mean, that's a concerning thing. So that's a group to watch because I mean, you know who you got. You're missing MJ Sherman a ton, who was a 3-down player at that spot last year. We'll see, if anybody's up to the task.
Kevin, as someone who sat in through a lot of production meetings and talked with coaches and players in the days leading up to a game, have you ever experienced where a team was really, really in on its punter in the way that Nebraska is with Archie Wilson? Because
Never.
this is feels like a bit of a phenomenon. And then you see in his not just collegiate debut, but his American football debut, the guy hits several punts inside the 20. His last punt, they have to have it, pins a team inside the 10. What do you kind of make of this Archie Wilson story, just from a broadcast perspective?
I assumed that as this thing was going on, I was being gaslit a little bit. Like this is a thing that's just, I mean, they're like they were trying to speak this into existence. This guy is going to be great. He's going to be great. He's going to be great because all we've seen for I don't know how many years has been shaky special teams. And when they've needed a punt, how many times have they not gotten a punt? I was more impressed with his placement of his punts than any punter I've seen in Nebraska the last several years, because that's the key. You can find a guy who can boom a 60-yard punt from time to time. Those guys do exist. I know we haven't seen a ton of that consistently in Nebraska, but I assumed in the preseason, this was another one of those preseason hype things like, oh, we're always throwing up every day in the trash cans. We've never worked any harder than we've ever worked this year, blah, blah, blah. Oh, this punter, you're not going to believe this punter. And then watching him, I was kind of impressed. I mean, he was unflappable. It was a huge stage. He's a continent or two away from home. His family was there, so that probably helped. But I was really impressed with the placement that he showed, the ability to get that punt inside the 15-yard line. That's such a big weapon. And to be able to punt short field and still get that done, I mean, maybe I'm on the Archie Wilson train now. I mean, I may be buying the hype. I watched all that in the preseason and I thought, all right, come on, guys. Now I'm kind of on the Wilson bandwagon here.
That's not a bad bandwagon to be on, no doubt about it. All right, let's go straight into picks to click here, and then we'll hit oddly specific predictions, and then the big score prediction. Really fascinated to see if anybody has Akron scoring this week after getting shut out last week by Wyoming, but we'll wait on that one. All right, Brunts, your pick to click.
I think Nebraska is going to get into their depth a little bit. I'm going to go with Cortez Mills as my pick to click. I think we see a little bit more of him out there. He's a big play waiting to happen. They need big plays, so why not Cortez Mills? He's my pick to click.
All right. I'm going to take what I think to be a relatively easy one. I think Dylan Raiola is going to have a nice week. I think Nebraska is going to try to, as discussed here, not necessarily force the explosive play, but try to really hit on a few explosive plays. I think they do against this Akron defense, and I think Dylan Raiola in part-time work has a pretty gaudy stat line. BC, who you got?
I think Bruns's talk about the Jacks and them needing to step up is going to fire them up, and Desan McCullough is going to have a few plays behind the line of scrimmage where he sort of announces himself to the fan base against this particular opponent.
Kevin?
All right, I'm going outside the box, and I'm going to disagree with Bruns a little bit on the left tackle spot. I think Gunnar Gatula is going to be my pick to click this week. I like what he has shown at that left tackle spot. I think somebody needs to assert themselves in the next couple of weeks there. I'm not at all sold on Pritchett, and it's not just because of the false start problem, although that's a big part of it. I liked what I saw from Gunnar Gatula. I think he's going to be the guy who is the pick to click this week, and I think you'll see him click at left tackle and start to separate a little bit at a very key position.
All right, it's time for oddly specific predictions. So, as always, we make very, very specific predictions about what we think will happen in this game against Akron. And we will let Kevin go last. He's never had the opportunity to do this before, so he can learn from our.
Sure. Everybody's going to steal my pick, I'm sure. All right, here we go.
All right, he can learn from Michael Brunt, who's hit on a few of them. And I think, did you have one that partially played out? Yeah,
it was part. I had Archie getting 3 inside the 10. But it was two inside the 5, and he didn't do it for me. So, but we were counting along in the press box, ripping the little paper chain off every time he got inside the 20. So, I'll take a half win on that. I'm going back to the well. I think Nebraska gets it done through the air this week. I think the tight ends, as you would expect, are going to have a good day. I'm going to say 3 touchdowns to tight ends, 1 to Luke Lindenmeyer, 1 to Carter Nelson, who we're still considering a tight end. I think so. And then we get Heinrich Harburg with a touchdown as well. 3 touchdowns to the tight ends, the longest going to Carter Nelson on a 17-yarder, kind of over the middle, but he makes a nice catch, keeps his feet, and gets into the end zone for a 17-yard touchdown.
Is the Harburg one going to be through the air, or is he going to be running that one in?
He's catching it. He's going to box guys out around the goal line and make a catch there. Just a short one, though. So let's say 6 yards. 6 yards for Harburg, 17 for Carter Nelson.
Okay.
All right.
BT?
There's going to be that explosive touchdown through the air. It's going to come to Isaiah Hunter, 57 yards. It's going to be one of those deals where he kind of gets tripped around the 10 and he's, stumbling at the 5. It's like, did he get in? They might have to review it, but they're going to say that he stretched it over. And so people will be really enthused about that on social media. Also, they will block a punt. Vince Genatone will get his hand on a punt. And it'll be one of those where we're not sure if it's a block or not, but it officially goes down. It travels about 27 yards. So there's still some distance on it, but it ends up counting, and we make a big deal about it in our post-game stories.
All right. I appreciate you working us in there too, as well. I am going to go on the defensive side of the ball. First sack of the year is actually going to be a strip sack from one Vincent Shavers. He forced a fumble in week 1. He's going to force one in week 2. He's going to get Ben Finley early in the game, force the fumble, and set things up for Nebraska with a short field touchdown. We'll say it happens late in the first quarter. It'll be Akron's second possession. Vincent Shavers gets in there, forces a fumble on the strip sack. Kevin, what do you got for us?
Sierra Wright, who is feeling snubbed all week. The BC didn't even include him in the Pro Football Focus stuff. It's like he wasn't even on the field against Cincinnati, and he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's been using this all week long. It's like a grain of sand in an oyster, and it's going to turn into a pearl on Saturday because Sierra Wright, Ben Finley is going to be cocky. He's going to think, you know what? I read this Pro Football Focus stuff. I read BC stuff. Sierra Wright isn't even a factor. I'm going after him. He's going to go after him. Sierra Wright is going to pick it off. He's going to tiptoe down the sideline. He's going to have a 64-yard interception return for a touchdown that's really going to blow this game wide open. He's going to reveal, as he pulls up his jersey, a picture of BC on a T-shirt underneath with an X through it to celebrate his touchdown.
Oh, no. Sierra Wright's going to go the way of Jack Stoll.
He's Thomas Fedoni crushing a local radio show host last year, and he's going to do it in a bigger way.
Incredible.
I mean, that would be pretty sweet if that happened. And it's actually furthering in my mind the actual real question if we should even write the Pro Football Focus stuff. But that's just for me. But it is true that I did briefly forget his snap count in there, and I was called out rightly in the thread. And if Sierra uses that for motivation, Husker fans are just fine with that, I'm sure.
Would you take a photo in the post game with Sierra Wright wearing your face with a slash through it?
Oh yeah,
just to
awesome,
prove that you've buried the hatchet there.
Yeah.
I think that'd be good.
I love that specific call though. That's an original
and specific. I was told oddly specific. So there we go.
That hit it.
Yeah. He did it well. All right, score prediction, Kevin. We'll give you the honors here.
Akron scores. Akron crosses the scoring column. It may be 2 field goals. It may be a touchdown and a missed extra point. Nebraska 48, Akron 6.
Okay. All right. Brunts.
Sorry, I'm over here appreciating BC being Sierra Wright's LeBradford Smith. Like that's basically I'm dying here. Nebraska 41 to 10. 41-10. There's some late sweating on that number, but 41-10 Nebraska does not get the cover.
That's a Zips cover. Yep.
All right. Brian?
I have the same deal. 45-13 Nebraska. This is I guess a Scott Van Pelt special. This one, I think Akron scores late to make some folks unhappy.
All right. I have 44-7. Nebraska gets a handful of field goals early. People are a little antsy, and then the touchdowns start to roll in. Akron scores late in the game. All right. We all have Nebraska winning. I'm sure that's going to shock the listeners out there, but we all have Akron scoring, so that counts for something. All right, Kevin, we appreciate your time here on the Husker 24/7 HypeCast. You've already entered Husker 24/7 HypeCast lore with your oddly specific prediction. I don't know that that's going to get topped this season. And should someone deliver Sierra Wright a shirt with BC's face slashed out on it, I hope that he wears it for us.
I would be delighted to see that prediction come true in every single aspect, especially the BC and Sierra picture in the post game. Please put that on every possible social media outlet if that happens.
I think we will certainly make sure that one breaks the internet should that come to fruition. So, Kevin, we appreciate it. For Michael Bruns, Brian Christopherson, I'm Mike Shaver. We're Husker 24/7. Check out everything we have going on at Husker247.com. We'll catch you next time.